that we're getting closer. And the first things I say won't be too insightful, so I think that the folks who are gathering and coming back into the room won't be missing much if I go ahead and kick things off now. There's no volume. Is that better? Oh, they never turned it on. Okay, we're gonna take care of that. Well, then I'll do hand puppets for a minute. So far, I hope the rest of you are seeing and enjoying the diversity of views and information that I have over the course of the last few hours today, and then, of course, yesterday all day. It sounds like the room has maybe come back to life here, so I think we can go ahead and press on. So I'm going to provide you with with just what's on the screen here, a proposal. Well, it's not on the screen yet because I haven't tripped the slide, but this is a proposal having to do with a registry concept for drones. And then perhaps we'll have a chance for a few minutes of dialogue. I hope there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. If you have a question that you feel the need to pose and would like to type it in, plenary at ICAO is the email that we'll use to capture that. And we'll see if we can't do that during the next 20, 25 minutes. And then we're going to move right smartly into our concluding panel, which will review the 2 days and talk about some of the next steps. And we'll also be interactive using the same plenary at ICAO in that last part of the day. So without further delay, we're all feeling these challenges. And I personally fly a drone now. I had to go buy one to learn about this business. And I've taken it around the world with me when I travel. And that's an entertaining activity in and of itself, just to carry it and get it in and out of a country and see whether it's legal to fly in a country. And I certainly don't want a law enforcement officer from another country who doesn't speak my language approaching me and asking me what I'm doing, and then when I present my business card from the International Civil Aviation Organization, making the front news. So we've gotten feedback from states. They don't like the idea of a registry that they don't have control over in some states. They clearly want to have sovereignty over how a registration database is created, how it is utilized in their own state. That makes perfect sense from the perspective of a state, but from the perspective of an international traveler, if I'm a citizen of state A traveling to state B, C, or D, I'm not sure that necessarily fulfills my requirements. So right now we're saying ICAO doesn't need to mandate this registry. The idea would be that a registry has value to the people who need it and who want to utilize it, but it probably is not something that the world is ready for mandatory use. People have asked ICAO to facilitate interoperability for a drone, for drone use, like many of the vendors here are talking about, being able to take a drone and use it commercially in activities in more than one country. And in certain environments, that's almost a prerequisite for a successful business. If you're operating in Europe, in many cases, you're going to operate in 2, 3, 4 countries in a day. It's possible to do that if you're doing a survey of some sort. And then they've asked ICAO to leverage our experience to support states in a rapidly evolving environment. Well, I'm not so sure that we're the best place to go for rapidly evolving environment support, but it's clear to me, and it was pointed out, you'll see one of the slides, you know, people say crawl, walk, run is the way we should be approaching some of these challenges. Well, frankly, to keep up with this industry, it's all run. So we're going to have to do things differently than we've done in the past. I'll be the first to say the Secretariat understands that, and I think that's one of the things out of this conference we'll be relaying to the governing bodies at ICAO. We think there's probably a little lack of consistency between the states on what they think they need and when they need it. Most states don't have any registration system. In fact, most states don't have any law yet that addresses large parts of this industry. There isn't a way, as we've seen in some of the conversations, to identify and contact the operator of a drone once you see it, except if you Anecdotally, the best way to do this is to watch somebody's YouTube feed and see what they post on YouTube to be able to chase them down. And then to track drones across borders, which we've talked about before. So why ICAO? We've already said this isn't our mandate to deal with small drones. We do have an obligation, though, under the Chicago Convention, Article 21, to assist states with registration for operations which are conducted in another state. So theoretically, if I buy my drone from country A, operate it in country B as a citizen, and then take it to country C, there's an obligation somehow for country B to assist with the registration requirement in country C, C, B and C, whichever. It's mixing back and forth. There's also an obligation for the rest of manned aviation to have some sort of marking, have a nationality.
So we think our experience with these two elements gives us some policy coverage to assist states who are trying to grapple with this issue from the ICAO umbrella.
Now today we operate an aircraft registration system for internationally operated aircraft. And that's done in conjunction with the International Registry of Commercial Aircraft, who deal with the vast majority of airplanes that fly internationally. And that's been very successful. But in comparison to the unmanned aircraft universe, that's actually a pretty small solar system. We're talking about registering literally hundreds of thousands of vehicles in this challenge or this problem statement. So we think there's a need for interoperability in this process. We think from the perspective of the fact that your stakeholder community that's going to regulate is more than likely going to be an aviation-centric entity in a state, ICAO is a natural place for that interaction to occur between the state and the global community. So that's why we would suggest that ICAO is the right place to talk about how these policies get established and perhaps how the service gets delivered. So this is a potential solution that the Secretariat has essentially been evaluating, and we are presenting it here today as a hypothesis, really, as a proposal that we're looking for feedback on. ICAO would host a drone registration platform, providing a plug-and-play option for states who do not have an existing drone registry. It would enable an application programming interface to integrate with a state that does have an existing drone registry. It would have optional participation, but clearly you would have to participate in some way interactively with other states to have the benefits of features for international operations for state-registered aircraft and operators, for third-party applications to be developed around the global information database, which could be accessed through this methodology. There are a lot of people in the industry who need some portions of this information. And then for streamlined and consistent registration processes so that we get the users who are new to this industry to actually participate. I've flown my drone in a dozen countries, and I know I'm not registered in a dozen countries. It would have been really cool if I'd have had one place to go for that. Theoretically, the manufacturer of my drone is the place I might have gone because they actually have everything that I've ever done. But that's beside the point. Now we're going to play a little concept video, and then we'll go through the rest of this deck and see if we can't get to some Q&A. Okay, so the key points. This would be a database that is a global registry. It provides a custom state-specific registration platform powered by the engine available in a specific state. It would enable optional integration of existing state systems. States maintain the approval authority in accordance with their own regulations. And I'll show you a quick demo on how that might work in a moment. State adoption is optional but necessary for interoperability. And this is a foundation for future developments of third-party applications. And so we've seen some apps, I think, through the course of the 2 days here where we've got like drone radar in one country and we've got other apps that allow people to see what's going on. Well, think about the opportunities for essentially having access to all the drones registered globally for an application provider and how that might work. So the registration example. Okay, I think I have to narrate this one. So Futureland's drone registry, the user's going in, they're logging in, they're putting in their username, password, their address, etc., and essentially just going through a process that permits them to register once for utilization essentially anywhere that they want to fly. This doesn't say they're rated, licensed, properly trained. This is just the database of essentially ownership at this point. And then once we get done with that, they put in the model number, they put in the serial number. It tells essentially what kind of a drone it is for the purposes of parsing out what kind of a might be from the perspective of somebody querying the database. Now, unfortunately, the Futureland's administrator has 432,000 names in the list here to go through and approve, but we would hope that that wouldn't happen all on one weekend. We can even have it posted in one of the 6 ICAO languages. Okay. I think there's opportunities for data analysis on the state of the industry through this methodology. We certainly think it facilitates international access to airspace in accordance with state regulations, as we've talked about before. Third-party applications we think are interesting, but we need consistency in the data fields so that people know what they're parsing and what they're drawing out of the database. And we think that this can reduce some of the technical complexity of innovating in the field if we have one place to go. That does not mean that each of the databases is the same. The APIs could be designed so that there are multiple APIs globally depending upon how you're interacting with the global database. So we'd like feedback from the attendees here, either today or through the course of the next few weeks. And we're going to continue to iterate the idea in consultation with the Small U.S. Advisory Group and others. We think that this is an opportunity to establish a unique identifier for the operator, for the drone, that essentially is interchangeable. And notional target would be to have this available for demonstration early on, with operations available roughly a year from now. So what are the challenges? Are we hitting the mark? Those were the 3 challenges we posted. I won't read them again. And I guess I will. How can a law enforcement engage with this process in a way that is consistent for the user? And how can the industry contribute to facilitation here? I've heard a lot in the last 2 days, which I think have already told us there are a lot of ideas about this. How do we harmonize those ideas? That's the end of the presentation. Now, I have 2 questions. Good. Let's see what's going on with them. Question 1. How soon could we see the data set requirements to ensure that we develop our own registry so we can make sure good commonality, easy interoperability of the data? So I think that's to be determined, but I think that's a challenge statement as much as it is a, Leslie, what are we thinking? I'll put you on the spot. Go ahead.
Well, I think the advisory group will be looking into that in the near term, and perhaps we can actually have a statement on it at GANIS in December.
Okay. So Leslie's responding to the challenge by saying by December she thinks she can have a preliminary statement. Wow. Just what the data elements are. Okay. Second question from Dr. Benzarouk. What is the role of SATCOM-based tracking solutions like AFF, present solutions in building global UTM? No presentation has deeply discussed this opportunity, especially using low Earth orbit ones used for GADS. Even if it is cost-consuming, it has multiple efficiency with global coverage plus low-cost data burst plus small size embedded, and for some GPS backup in some denied environments. I think maybe we're beyond the scope of identification. That's more to tracking. But I'll see if anybody has an answer, because I don't. Okay, I'm going to wait on that. I have 3 more questions. Could incidents be recorded via the system to enable a global database? Spoken like a true airworthiness inspector. Sorry. Or flat ops inspector. I don't think at this point we were proposing that this would become the repository of all global incidents. However, that's a great question. You'll have to tell me, what do you think? The second question, or the next question, have we given thought to how big the address space needs to be to handle future unique identifiers for unmanned aircraft? I'm seeing a nod in the front. Oh, no, the nod is appreciation for the question. Okay, I like that. Anybody want to answer that?
We cannot hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mic is on. You can't? Oh, I just have to really be really close to it? Okay. We'll make the address space big enough. I think the industry is going to have to tell us what they think the size of the sales anticipated is over the next 20 years. I have a humor question. I'll come back to it. How do you distinguish between an owner-operator and a pilot? You'll have to tell us. It's a great question, though, for the group that wants to build this. And question, is ICAO ready to lead the work on standards for the unique registration number? I have a hand up in the back, Mr. Marin.
So, good afternoon, everybody. So we've heard a lot today about other of ways to manage this in an untraditional way and allow the flexibility that the industry needs. And this is something that needs to be discussed, but perhaps rather than going to look at other industries, we should look at our own and then find how that can be accommodated. We have under Annex 7 and in coordination with ITU, the nationality marks. So if you have a system where you use the nationality marks as the first couple of digits of an ID, a unique ID, so for example, N for the US, C for Canada, etc., and then each state then determines what they need beyond that nationality mark, is a way that can be constructed in much way that the internet is now and not so binding. So rather than having to set a number that everybody in each state needs to determine and then end up with not enough numbers in due course, a schema can be made using what we already have in aviation that gives the liberty of each state to then determine it. This also has the advantage, if we go down this path, that if UTM needs to be integrated with ATM and we use common aviation nationality marks, we may make that easier, make that integration easier in due course. For thought.
Okay, thanks, Miguel. It was noted to me that we have another video that shows how you can get your drone, or you can show your drone as stolen should somebody else actually take it from you, so that you won't be liable for the use of your drone after it's gone missing. Let's just consider that that is a feature. Somebody's asked the question that the global telco industry agreed on mobile standards in a very quick time frame as it drove revenues for everyone. I don't know how quick it was. It took 20-something years to move the various standards to a common, where we're seeing LTE now pretty ubiquitous around the globe. But what revenue model for regulators can be attached to UTM that would drive uptake in member countries with low budgets? So I think that's a great question. How would an operator obtain a 24-bit ICAO transponder code when registering through the Global Drone Register? So I think the presumption in the question is that we would be looking to get something that's going to be reflecting off of ADS-B. You'd want to have a 24-bit ICAO address that's unique. I don't think we had made that determination that it was required yet to be that ICAO compliant in the design of these registration marks or numbers. So I think we're still looking for the inputs from how the industry thinks the best way to standardize this might be. And then the last, we're almost out of time. We are out of time. Couple of other posed questions. Is it possible to register under a false name in the registry? How can we prohibit this from happening? That would not be possible. That's false news. No, clearly those kinds of protections are a challenge that we might have to think about how that could be done. And the expected life cycle of drones is much shorter than traditional aircraft. Have we given thought to how to recycle the unique identifiers that have expired? And how would we track numbers that are no longer in use through retirement, accident, or other? It's a good question. For the tracking purposes, I would question whether that's even a requirement, but something to think about. And then I'm going to go back to the last question that I skipped because it's fun. And is there any concern regarding the registration of children? Is it the intent to register all UASs that are including toy, micro drones available at Walmart, etc.? Wow. I don't know. But registering the children, that might be easier than registering all their drones. Okay, so that mix of questions, that's the kind of thing we want to see continue. The kind of dialogue where people say, you know, what are you thinking about? I think the first thing that I would say when I'm looking at this proposal is, what's the problem? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And if we get a really good inventory of the problem and understand the problem from multiple stakeholders' perspective, security, privacy, law enforcement, effectiveness, airspace safety, etc., and can capture those needs in a consolidated way, that's going to allow us to understand more about what the answer needs to look like. So I'm much more interested right now in understanding the problem. And for me, the problem is scalability. This industry, to scale effectively, needs to be able to interact with all these other external stakeholders in a way that's going to be successful, that mitigates the risk of their perceptions or the real risk of, you know, property damage or personal injury. So we're going to continue the journey, but we wanted to preview this to this group because you're the people who care and you know about it. And any of the information we get from you, we will be reflecting back to the governing council at ICAO and to the Air Navigation Commission for their use in charting the next steps at ICAO. And I want to thank you for your participation in the Q&A here. It's very quick. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the last panelist to come up to the stage, and we'll get ready to start up the wrap-up session. If I had spent more money, I would have music right now while we do this. One second.